to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight it is stories for children. And I see we have the amazing Molly there in the background. Give us a wave, Molly. Thank you. Good to see you, Molly. There's also Molly's mum. It's a bit of a Scots evening today. We're gone. We're from Gabardine, Aberdeen to the shores of which loch?
Loch Lomond.
Loch Lomond, and down to the east of England fens with Louis, and down to Marrakesh with Ali, and across to Washington D.C. with Baba C, who has lost his visuals. But however, and we've got Ben joining us. Hello, Ben. So, without further ado, let me introduce tonight's storyteller, and he likes to think of them as songs. But the way you can tell, he's got a guitar in his hand. But a great friend of mine, who I've shared many a field with, that's after we were both kicked out of the houses we're at simultaneously. The wonderful Donald Nelson. A big round of applause, Donald Nelson.
Well, thank you very much, John. Excuse me, great to be back. You were asking me if it was raining in Scotland, and strangely enough, it is. But also, I was going to sing a song about rain. So here we go. It's a song by a man called Matt McGinn, who's a Scottish songwriter, poet, storyteller, everything. It's called Little Ticks of Time. Because my throat's a bit rough today. Those little ticks of... Excuse me. That's better. Start again. The little ticks of time keep on talking, 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 talking. Ticky, tick, 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 talking all the day. The little ticks of time, no reason, no rhyme. They just tick, 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 talk the time away. The sun picks up little drops of water in her hands as she rolls across the sky. When her hands are cooling down, she makes a little cloud and sends a little cloud drifting by. The little ticks of time keep on talking, 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 ticky, tick, 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 talking all the day. The little ticks of time, no reason, no rhyme. Tick, ticky, tick, 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 talk the time away. The little cloud goes drifting through the heavens. He has a little task he must fulfill. He makes little waterfalls and gently lets them fall as raindrops down upon the hill. The little ticks of time keep on talking, 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 tick, 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 talking all the way. The little ticks of time, no reason, no rhyme. They just tick, 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 talk the time away. As the raindrops fall upon the hilltop, each one stops to say hello, and their faces fairly beam as they make a little stream and send the stream trickling down below. The little ticks of time keep on talking, 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 tick, 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 talking all the day. The little ticks of time, no reason, no rhyme. They just tick, 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 talk the time away. The stream meets another and another, and they come upon another running free. And they gurgle as they run, and they all become as one, mighty river flowing to the sea. The little ticks of time keep on talking, talking, talking. Ticky tick, 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 talking all the day. The little ticks of time, no reason, no rhyme. They just ticky tick, 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 talking time away. The little ticks of time keep on talking, 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 talking. Tick, 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 talking all the day. The little ticks of time, no reason, no rhyme. They just tick, 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 talk the time away. Thank you. Thank you. Now, a story. And lovely to see an imp joining in there. And I don't mean Molly. There we go. Hello. Anyway, a story. And this is a story that I wrote a long time ago. And I haven't told it for a long time, or even longer than that. And I'll do my best to remember it. And it's about a princess. And this princess was called Polynesia. Now, Princess Polynesia was very well named because a Polonaise is a type of dance. And that is what Princess Polynesia loved to do. She loved to dance. And not only did she love to dance, she was very good. Better than anybody you've ever seen on Strictly. She was brilliant. Now, she wasn't just a brilliant dancer. She was absolutely beautiful. And her father, King Porteous, and her mother, Queen Isabella, loved her very much. And King Porteous, he was a nice man, a very generous man to all his subjects. He was so good. If somebody was ill and they couldn't go to work out in the fields, he would just give them money for food and help to, he would pay their rent for them, and it would just help anybody out. If the roof was leaking, he would get the roof fixed. And oh, he loved to hold festivals and balls, and he would invite everybody from the richest people in the kingdom down to the peasants that worked in the fields. He was so good. He was so good that he realised that his bank balance was getting a little bit low. Well, he said to Queen Isabella, I think we better start tightening our belts. We're getting a little bit skint. And just as he said that, there was a knock on the castle door. Oh, I wonder who that could be. King Porteous sent one of the servants to answer the door. The servant opened the door. And there stood a man with a long white beard and long white hair and very finely dressed. And he said, are you John Rowe? He said, no, I'm not that charlatan. My name, excuse me, my name is Lord Alfred, and I have come to speak to the king. Well, sire, you'd better come in. And the servant took the man in, and a groom took his beautiful white horse away to the stables. And the man was shown into the king's room. And the king said, oh, what a surprise. This is wonderful. We love visitors. Come and sit down and eat with us. And tell us why you've come to visit. Well, the old man sat down and he said, my name is King Alfred. And I have a proposition for you. Oh, good, said the king. We like propositions, don't we, Queen Isabella? And Queen Isabella said, oh, yes, we do, we do. What is it? He said. King Alfred, Lord Alfred said, well, I have heard that your bank balance is getting pretty low and you don't have much money left. Well, I am a very rich merchant and I can help you out. I can give you any amount of money you want. That's very generous, said King Porteous. But you can't just give me money. I can't just take your money off you. Ah, no, there's something you must do. I have seen your daughter dancing. Your daughter is beautiful. For me to give you the money, you must give me your daughter's hand in marriage. But that's ridiculous, said the king. Well, said Lord Alfred, you don't get the money. Well, I'll tell you what, said the king. I can't just tell my daughter who to marry. Let's call her here, and you can ask her yourself. So the servants went to fetch Princess Polynesia. And Princess Polynesia danced into the room, twirled round twice, and sat down beside her father. Yes, Daddy, what is it you wanted? Princess Polynesia, this is Lord Alfred, and he has a question for you. Well, Princess Polynesia, said Lord Alfred, I would like you to marry me. No, I demand that you marry me. What? Said Princess Pauline. I don't even know you. I've never seen you before in my life. And you're, well, I don't mean to be rude, but you're a bit old for me. You will marry me. If you don't marry me, this kingdom will go to ruin. Well, I am not marrying you, said the princess. And she stood up to go out the room. And Lord Alfred said, oh, just one thing. I told you I was a rich merchant. I am also a very powerful wizard. And he pointed down to Princess Pauline's ballet shoes. And the ribbons in the ballet shoes untied themselves. And then her feet closed together and the ribbons tied themselves onto each other so that she couldn't move her feet apart. And she looked down and she bent down and she tried to undo the knots. But as she tried to undo the knots, they get tighter and tighter and tighter. And she tried to pull her shoes off. And the more she tried to pull her shoes off, the faster they get stuck. Well, Lord Alfred said, when you promise to marry me, I shall release this spell. And he turned and walked out of the room, slammed the door on his horse and rode off into the distance. Well, the king looked at the queen and the queen looked at the king and they both looked at Princess Pauline. What are we going to do? Well, said the king, I know what to do. And he sent for the blacksmith. And Princess Pauline, they said, the blacksmith, I'm not a horse. Yeah, but he's very strong. Maybe he can pull the shoes from your feet. He couldn't do that. And they called for the man who was round the villages, sharpening knives. And he came and he tried to cut the ribbons. But the flimsy ribbons just made the knives blunt, and then even more blunt and more blunt, until there was almost nothing left of them. They just could not. And they get doctors and they get other wizards and they get everyone they could think of getting shoes. Nothing worked. And because the princess who loved to dance so much couldn't dance, he was so sad. He was so miserable. And because her mum and dad loved her so much, they became sad and miserable. And because the king and queen, who were so generous to their people, were sad and miserable. Everyone became sad and miserable. Everyone in the kingdom. And they stopped going to work. And the cows get thin. And the fields of crops get full of weeds. And oh, the place was in a terrible, terrible state. Well, while all this was going on, excuse me, just have some coffee. While all this was going on, in a country far away, there was a war, there was a battle. And at the end of the battle, a young man lay on the ground. He'd lost his horse. He'd lost his helmet. His armour was all bashed and bent. And he managed to stand up. Oh, the pain, he was bashed and bruised. But he managed to get up. And he looked down, and his sword that had been given to him by his father before he went to battle was broken. All he had left was the hilt, the handle of the sword, and the bit that goes across, and about that much tiny, tiny little piece of blade left. But because his father had given it to him, he didn't throw it away. He kept it, and he stuck what was left into his belt. And he started to walk home. And he walked, and he walked, and he walked, and he walked, and he walked. And he was so tired. And he was so hungry. And he walked, and he couldn't find anything to eat. Maybe a few berries, some nuts, still very hungry. And he walked down a path, and as he went round a bend in the path, he noticed a cart full of apples. And the cart was pulled by a donkey. Well, it would have been pulled by a donkey, except the wheel had fallen off. And there was an old woman standing, scratching her head and looking at the wheel and looking at the cart. And then she saw the young man. And the young man approached and said, "You seem to be in a bit of trouble there." She said, "Yes, the wheel's fallen off my cart and I can't get to market to sell my apples. Could you please help me?" Well, the young man, he was tired and he was weak with hunger. But he was a nice young man, and he said, "Yes, I'll help you." And he looked around and he wondered what he could do. Then he had an idea. He saw a rock beside the path and he rolled it over beside the cart. And then he saw a broken branch lying in the woods, and he took the branch and he put it underneath the end of the cart. And he laid it against the rock, and he held on to the end of the branch, and he pulled and he heaved, and what strength he had and his weight, he managed to just raise the cart high enough for the old woman to put the wheel back on the cart. "Oh, thank you, sir. How can I repay you? I can't repay you until if I go to market and sell my apples, I can give you some money." And the young man said, "No. All I need is something to eat. Would you mind if I took an apple or two?" "Of course, take as many as you like," said the old woman. And he sat down on the end of the cart and started to eat. And as he was eating, he told her about the battle and about how he'd lost his horse and he was sore and he was trying to get home to his family, and how his sword that his father had given him was broken. And when he was finished, the old woman said, "Well, I have a story for you. You're not the first person to pass by here. The first person to pass by was a gentleman on a fine horse. And he rode along, and I said, 'Sir, please, can you help me? The wheel's fallen from my cart and I can't get to market. And the gentleman said, me? Help you? Of course not. I might get my fine clothes dirty. I'm not helping you. And off he rode. Well, the second person to pass by was a blacksmith. And the blacksmith said, she stopped the blacksmith and said, please, sir, can you help me? The wheel's fallen from my cart and I can't get it back on and I can't get to market. Would you please help me put it back on? And the blacksmith said, well, what can you give me? And she said, I can't give you anything until I get to market and sell my apples. And then I'll give you the money. I'll give you some money. And he said, oh, don't take me for a fool. I'll help you. You'll go to the market, sell your apples, make some money, and then you'll be off and I'll never see you again and you won't pay me. And he rode along the road. And the third person to come along was a man, and he was in a cart, and his cart was full of apples. And she said, oh, please, sir, can you help me? The wheel's fallen from my cart, and I can't get to market to sell my apples. And the man said, I'm not helping you. If I get to the market first, I'll sell my apples, and I'll get the highest price. And off he rode. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, said the young man. And the old woman said, take some apples with you for the road. And he said, thank you very much. And before he left, she said to him, and that sword of yours, you look after that sword, because one day, broken as it is, it may just come in useful. Well, they said their goodbyes and the young man walked away. And he walked 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 and he walked. He came to a little village. And he noticed this little village was very, very run down. And he walked through the village and he came to a town. And this town was just as run down. And he walked through the town and everybody in the town looked so sad and miserable and, oh, I wouldn't like to live here, he thought. And he walked on and he came to another village and that was exactly the same. And from that village he saw up in the hill the castle, the king's castle. And he thought, I'll go up there and see if I can find a bed for tonight. So he walked up the hill to the castle. And he knocked on the door. And the door was opened by a very glum-looking servant. Yes, sir. Can I help you? And the young man said, my name is Sir Ethan, and I seek refuge for the night. Well, Sir Ethan, you'd better come in. And the servant took Sir Ethan to meet the king and the queen. And the king and the queen were sitting at the table, just about to start dinner. And they were introduced to Sir Ethan. And the king said, oh, please sit down. You can eat with us, but we just have some bread and some cheese. We don't have very much. And Sir Ethan said, oh, that's more than enough. I've not eaten for 2 days. That would be lovely. And he sat down. And as he was eating, he said, Sire, I don't mean to be rude, but as I walked through your kingdom, I noticed that everyone was a bit sad and the place wasn't in very good condition. And the king said, yes, I'm afraid so. And he told him the story of Lord Alfred and the spell he cast on Princess Polynesia and how Princess Polynesia couldn't dance and how everybody was so sad and they couldn't have parties and they couldn't have festivals, and oh, it was a terrible, terrible time. Well, said Sir Ethan, maybe there's something I can do. Ah, no, there's nothing you can do. We've tried everything and we've tried everyone, said the king. No, said Queen Isabella, we've not tried everyone. We've never met Sir Ethan before. Maybe there's something he can do. Well, the king said, okay, call for the princess. And the princess was carried in by two servants because she couldn't walk because her feet were tied together. And she was brought in and sat on a chair. And as soon as Sir Ethan looked at her, like in all good stories, he fell in love instantly. And he was not a bad looking chap himself. And the princess thought, he looks nice. And Sir Ethan got down on his knees and he grabbed the ribbons at the princess's feet and he tried to undo them. But as he tried to undo the ribbons, he get tighter and tighter. And he said, give me the sharpest knife in the house. And he got the sharp knife and he tried to cut the ribbons. It was no use. The knife just got blunter and blunter and blunter. And he tried to pull the shoes off, but they just get tighter and tighter on the princess's feet. And he stood up and he said to the king, you know, sir, you're right. There is nothing I can do. But just at that, he felt a trembling at his side. And he looked down and the hilt, the broken sword, was shaking. And he took it in his hand and he pulled it from his belt. And as he pulled it from his belt, it got longer and longer and longer and longer until once again his sword was full length. And the edge of it was so sharp, it glinted in the sunlight coming through the window. And he looked down at the princess's feet. And he put the sword down. And he thought to himself, surely this sword is sharp enough to cut the ribbons. But as soon as he touched the ribbons, the knots flew apart. And the princess was free again. And she got up and she looked at her feet. And she took a step. And then another step. Then another step. Then she did a little dance. And then she started to pirouette round and round and round the room. And the king looked at the queen and the queen looked at the king. And they started to clap. And as they were clapping, the servants started to clap. And the noise of the servants clapping in the dining room filtered down through the castle. And the rest of the servants and the maids started to clap. And the clapping noise filtered down into the village. And the news came down, the princess is free, and they started to clap and they started to sing, and it filtered through to the town and the next village and the next village and the next town, and everyone was so happy. They were so happy that they could have parties and festivals and celebrations. And of course, there was a celebration, a big celebration. And that big celebration was the marriage of Princess Polynesia and Sir Ethan, who is now Prince Ethan. And during the marriage, in a country far away, a fine gentleman suddenly fell from his horse into the muddiest puddle you have ever seen. And a blacksmith could not work out why he couldn't get the flame in his forge to light. And when an apple seller got to market, he couldn't understand why every single apple in his cart had suddenly gone rotten. Thank you. You go, see, if you do deep, if I can't even speak, if you do good deeds, it'll come back to you. Well, what's the time?
Well, I said, have you got another song, Donald?
Another song.
We like a song.
Right, this is a song without the guitar. And it's from a movie. It was sung by Danny Kaye. And from the story of Hans Christian Andersen. And it goes, you might have heard the story before, you might have heard the song before. And it goes a bit like this. There once was an ugly duckling with feathers all stubby and brown, and the other birds in so many words said, get out of town, get out, get out, get out of town. So he went with a quack and a waddle and a quack and a very unhappy frown. That poor little ugly duckling went wandering far and near, and in every place they said to his face, get out of here, get out, get out, get out of here. So he went with a quack and a waddle and a quack and a very unhappy tear. All through the winter time, he hid himself away, scared of showing his face, afraid what the others might say. All through the winter time, in his own little clump of reeds, till a flock of swans flying overhead very soon agreed. There's a very fine swan indeed. And he said, me, a swan? Go on. I'm not a swan, I'm just an ugly duckling. And the swan said, no. Look at the reflection in the lake, and you'll see. And he looked in the lake, and he saw a beautiful swan looking back at him. And he said, no, I'm not an ugly duckling. Oh, I forgot the words. No.
With feathers all stubbly and brown.
All stubbly and brown. And the other birds in so many words said, the best in town. The best. The best.
The best.
The best in town. Not a quack, not a quack, not a waddle, not a quack, but a soar and a glide and a snowy white back, and a head held noble and high, saying, who's an ugly duckling? Not I. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you very, very much.
Hey, Donald.
I haven't heard that in so long. Wonderful. Well done.
Hey, Donald. I appreciate when you got a little lost there. I was once in the middle of a story, and the story went two different ways, but it was like essentially the same story, and I couldn't remember which version I was telling. So what I did is that I made up a line, and I turned to the audience. I said, so what do you think he said next? And one little kid in the front row said the right line. And that told me nobody knew that I had lost my place. So, hey, forward join. It makes for great storytelling.
Oh, yes, you can always count on your audience to help you out. Right, now, Babasy, you want to...
You got about 10 minutes left.
Right, 10 minutes left. Right, a quick version of a Scottish story called Camlin. Now, oh goodness, Chatterhall Wood is in the borders, South Scotland, just north of the English border, and it's a dark, deep, beautiful place. And one day, Janet went walking in the woods. And she wandered through, and it was such a beautiful day. The birds were singing. She could smell the flowers. And she came to a little well, and she stopped at the little well, and she sat there looking around, and there was beautiful roses all round the well, the most beautiful roses she'd ever seen in her life. And she reached over and she picked one. And as she picked it, she heard a voice behind her saying, what do you think you're doing? And she turned round, and there was a young man. There's lots of young men in my stories, and beautiful ladies. There's a young man, and he said, what do you think you're doing wandering around my woods and picking my flowers? And she said, what do you mean your woods? My father is the laird. In Scotland, that's a landowner. My father is a laird, and these are his woods and his flowers, and I will wander where I want and pick what I want. Well, the young man laughed. Oh, really? Is that true? Come with me. And the two of them walked along, and they wandered the woods all day, and they laughed and they sang and they told each other stories. And at the end of the day, Janet thought, I've fallen in love with this young man. And she said to him, I must go home now, but please come with me. And the young man said, do you know, I would love to. There's only one problem. I can't leave the woods. You see, many years ago, I was riding through the woods, and the fairy queen came, and she snatched me, and she put a spell on me. She enchanted me. And now I can never leave the wood, and forever I must ride beside her as her protector when she rides out. And Janet said, oh, but what are we going to do? You can't stay here forever. I really, really want you to come back to the castle with me. Well, said the young man, I have a plan. Tonight is Halloween. I should have told this a few weeks ago. Tonight is Halloween. And every Halloween, we ride out. All the fairies, all the witches, all the goblins, all ride out through the forest. Tonight is that night. What I want you to do is, when you see me, grab hold of me and don't let me go. First of all, you'll see 100 black horses coming out. And then you'll see 100 brown horses coming out. And then you'll see 100 white horses coming out. I will be on one of these white horses next to the queen. But I'll be wearing my helmet, so you won't see me. What I'll do is I'll only wear one glove. So that night, when everyone else in the laird's castle was sleeping, Janet sneaked out, and at midnight she was in the woods, and all was very, very quiet. And then she heard a noise. She heard hooves, thundering of hooves, and she looked down the path, and they're coming towards her with black horses, 100 black horses. And on the back of these black horses were ugly witches, the ugliest witches you've ever seen in your life, riding past. And she let them pass. And then came the brown horses, and each horse had a goblin, a horrible green slimy goblin on its back. And she still hid, and she let the goblins pass. And then came the white horses, and she could see the queen in the middle, riding along, the beautiful queen of the fairies, riding along. And she looked, and beside the queen there was a man on a horse, and he was only wearing one glove. And as they passed, Janet jumped out and grabbed the man from his horse and held on to him. What do you think you're doing? The queen said, let him go at once. And Janet said, no, I'm going to hold him forever. Well, we'll see about that, said the fairy queen. And suddenly, the young man turned into a bear. a huge, smelly, hairy bear, but Janet didn't let go, and the bear was wriggling about. Janet didn't let go, and the Fairy Queen said, "Oh, I'll have to do something else," and she turned the bear into a wolf, a snarling wolf with a dribbling mouth and big sharp teeth, and it was growling, and Janet held on, and that was wriggling about too, and it was growling in her ear, and it was all down, dribbling all down her face, but she still didn't let go. And then the Queen got really angry, and she turned the wolf into a block of red hot iron, and it was burning Janet's hands. But she held on to it. "I'm not letting go. I am not letting go," she said to herself. And she held the block of red hot iron in her hands until the Queen got so angry that she turned and rode away on her horse. And the block of iron turned into a young man, the handsome young man that Janet had walked through the forest with that day. And she threw her cloak around him and led him to the castle. And as the Fairy Queen rode away in her anger, she suddenly disappeared. And she was never seen again. And of course, in all good fairy stories, Janet and the young knight get married, and they lived happily ever after. And that's the story of Tamlin. Well, what have we got? Well, we're just about on time there. So I will say thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for Pauline for helping me out with the song. Thank you for John for inviting me. And thank you to Molly and Louis and everyone else, and the imps, of course. I can't really see what imp that is.
That's Chiacho.
Oh, Chiacho, yeah. If I knew you were coming. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody.
Well, thank you.
That was brilliant.
Thank you, Louis.
Brilliant, brilliant.
That's all I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. Thank you for the stories and songs.
Thank you.
I thought when you did the first song, and while you're singing and play your guitar, I beat myself. I play drums.
Wow.
Drums. Yeah.
Louis was drumming while you were playing guitar.
Oh, right. I see. I didn't catch that. Yeah.
While you singing.
Yeah. It's always
while he was singing.
It would be a waste of time without you.
Yes.
I love
Ben's trying to say something. Ben has got his hand up. Oh, Ben's got his guitar.
Ben, have you got your guitar there as well?
Oh, wow.
Are you going to get a tune, Ben? No? Okay.
Well, I tell you what, who we've got next week, next Friday, we've got all the way from New Mexico, we've got Bob Canagas, and he's coming in from New Mexico, and he's telling stories for children. And the week after that, you see that person next to Molly, that Pauline person.
Oh, sorry.
Me.
That Pauline person is a very fine storyteller.
She is.
Yes, she is, isn't she, Louis? And you've seen her on other things as well. And Baba Seal like her because he loves Aberdeen accents.
Hey.
I love accents.
Yeah, but you really love Aberdeen accents. I know.
In fact, I use accent on my food. That's a bad joke.
Anyway, Ben, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, Ben. I have a guitar with no strings, but then I can't play.
Does Ben want to say something? Maybe the hand just went up. it's like putting a hand up in class, and then by the time you're asked, you've forgotten what you wanted to say in the first place. But for right now, on Sunday, it's open mic time for everyone with the worldwide story round at 6 o'clock in the evening. Our young tellers, our young international tellers, are on Tuesday evening, now half an hour earlier, 4:30 UK time, because it's getting really late in India for the Indian girls to come on, and so I've had a request from India, could we make it half an hour earlier? So when the princesses ask, the princesses get.
That's right.
We know our place, Babasi, don't we?
We're learning.
We're learning. And Donald's just a day behind us learning, but he's learning fairly quickly.
By the way, did you notice on the thing you posted on Facebook, you put down the 3rd of November?
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, I did put today. Well, I tend to do that at the beginning of the month. It's a habit, which I need to break myself of.
John Rowe is a time traveler.
Yeah, but thank you for pointing out my senility, Donald. Right, Louis and everyone else, good night. Thank you very much. I'm going to FB message you in a minute, Babasi.
You're going to message me?
Yeah, we'll talk on Messenger.
Oh, okay. I'll switch to that because now I have a couple of minutes. I made some adjustments. All right.
Okay. See you then. Bye.
Until the next time, to be continued.
Thank
Everyone
you.
take care.
Night, Louis.
Later, nephew Louis.
Have a good swim.
Take care, Ben. Is that a cat?
Oh, it's Molly.
Ben.
Bye.
Bye, Pauline.
Bye, Pauline.
Oh, I don't say bye. Until the next time.
Babasi?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you mean Louis, you mean? I was, wait a minute, Mum. I know. I'm sorry about my mum, Babasi. I'm saying, oh, what I'm saying.
He lost his place.
I don't know how many, but I text you. I did text you on soon.
Next week. Come
And I hope you have a good week.
on.
And I'll see you next Friday, I think.
All right. May you have a fantastic Friday, a super Saturday, a very special spiritual Sunday, and I'll see you next Friday. And Louis,
yes?
Real quick, enjoy your mom. My mom passed away, and every day I look at my sisters who look exactly like my mom. I'm reminded of her. Enjoy your mom. Sometimes you won't get along, but that's okay. Enjoy your mom.
I will. And she's here. She will, wait, she will say something.
Bye.
Hey, Louis' mom, whose name I've forgotten again, but that's okay. I think you don't mind being Louis' mom.
With a J.
All right. Okay, everybody. I think, and Ben, you have a good weekend, okay? All right.
Bye, Ben. Bye, Ali. Bye, Ben. Bye, Ben. See you.
Thanks, Ali.
Bye. On next one.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you so much.
Until the next time, good folk. Peace.